Good afternoon. Greetings from Brussels. My name is Rui Faria da Cunha, and I have the privilege and the honor of being the president of the Belgian-Portuguese Chamber of Commerce. As my day job, I work as a lawyer, both in Lisbon and in Brussels. On behalf of our board, I would like to welcome the participants to this event and thank our distinguished guest speakers for accepting our invitation. I would also like to thank our Secretary General, Pierre Poncelet, and our marketing assistant, Inês Giesteira, for their continued support to the Chamber and for their important role in the organization of this event. Before addressing a few words on the topic that brought us together, I would like to briefly introduce our Chamber. The Belgian-Portuguese Chamber of Commerce is one of the oldest and most reputed chambers in Brussels, since it was already created 83 years ago. It has today around 50 members, of which 12 are board members. As its core mission, the Chamber promotes and facilitates trade and investment between Belgium and Portugal, namely by way of collecting and disseminating information relevant to our members through its monthly newsletter, by replying to requests for information from members and non-members, by organizing events or trade missions. Since the current board took office in April 2019, we decided to add a bilateral dimension to the Chamber. That is, of course, the one that leads only with Belgium and Portugal, but we decided to add an European one. And that was by setting up an antenna, a network that allows us to identify the challenges and opportunities that arise from the European Union's policies that can have indeed an impact in business between Portugal and Belgium. Brussels is, as we know, not only the capital of Belgium, but also the capital of the European Union. So it would be just natural that our chamber would position itself as the Portuguese chamber to the EU. Before passing the floor to the specialists, allow me to say a few words about today's topic, the 2021 Portuguese presidency of the Council of the EU. If we read the Portuguese presidency's press releases, these were the main achievements. On recovery and resilience, the presidency laid the foundations for the economic recovery, securing the largest financial package in European history and guaranteeing the means to financing it through the ratification of the own resources decision. On the response to the pandemic, the main success has been the adoption of the European Union's digital COVID certificate. On the Green Deal recovery, for a greener Europe, the presidency has set the ambition to be the first continent to achieve carbon neutrality in 2050 and prepared the way for the Commission to propose today, 14th of July, the Fit for 55 climate package. The Portuguese presidency has also given priority to the implementing of the European Pillar of Social Rights, which was the main theme of the Social Summit that was organized in Porto at the beginning of May. Commitment to building a digital Europe was another one of the priority axes of the Portuguese presidency, with the objectives and results achieved transversally, from transport to justice, from cybersecurity to the promotion of connectivity between regions of the globe. In the last days of the Portuguese presidency, EU farming ministers have accepted the provisional deal struck with the European Parliament on the key elements of the Common Agricultural Policy reform, bringing the proposal a step closer to becoming part of the EU law. A few processes have also been unblocked during the Portuguese presidency, as the Conference on the Future of Europe, launched in May 2021, the Directive on Fiscal Transparency among large companies, the negotiations on economic trade and investment with India, the agreement between the Council and the European Parliament on changes to the Blue Card Directive, or the Directive on the Public Procurement Instrument. As for the shortcomings, analysts mentioned several files on the table that it did not make progress, namely on migration issues or indeed on the agreement with Mercosur. It is now time to pass the floor to our guest speakers. We will share their first-hand views on the Portuguese presidency's main achievements and shortcomings. All the speakers represent companies and institutions that are members of our chamber, and they're active in European affairs, having followed closely the Portuguese presidency. I will ask the speakers to introduce themselves and the companies that they represent, share their views on the Portuguese presidency and beyond. Please limit your presentation to 15 minutes. A Q&A session will follow the presentations. we kindly ask the participants to use the chat box to ask their questions. So let us start the event by welcoming our first guest speaker. Nicola Del Val de Souza Gavaya is Head of Public Affairs of Atrevia. Nicola has a law degree at University Rei Juan Carlos, MA in EU International Relations and Diplomacy at College of Europe, and a Master's in Food Safety, Food Law and Regulatory Affairs at Wageningen University. Nicola has integrated Atrevia in 2018 as Public Affairs Consultant, and in 2019, he became the Senior Consultant, and today is the Head of Public Affairs of the Brussels office of Atrevia. He's also a board member of our Chamber of Commerce. So let's go. And Nicola, please start. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rui, and thank you very much to all the members of the Chamber. It's actually a pleasure to be here. We should do this kind of event often. And it's really an honor to be the first speaker. As you rightly said, Rui, I am a lawyer as a background, and I'm passionate about agri-food. So I will touch mostly this specific issue, which is agri-food. First, I would like to say a foreword about the Portuguese presidency priorities, which were organized in three main axes. And also 5 action lines, right? On the priority side, we have the European recovery, leveraged by the climate and digital transition, the delivering of the European Pillar of Social Rights, as you mentioned, and also strengthening the strategy autonomy of Europe to be open to the world, right? I will focus on the very first one, so the European recovery through climate and digital transition. And on the action lines, I will take over 2 points. There were 5 action lines. So we had the resilient Europe, fostering recovery, cohesion, and European values. Then we had the green Europe, which is the first that I will talk about. So the promotion of the EU as a leader in climate action, and digital Europe, right? Accelerating the digital transformation for citizens and businesses. Then we had the social Europe and the global Europe, which are things that I will not mention. I will focus on those that are mostly related with the agriculture sector. It is worth to say that the Portuguese presidency defined their approach towards the agriculture as contributing to a resilient and green Europe, right? And appointed 4 thematic blocks. So the CAP reform, rural areas, sustainable use of pesticides, and the internationalization of the EU agri-model. I will leave this topic to the next speakers, the PAC, to Duarte, who definitely knows better than myself. But I would like to focus on a different concept, right, which is crucial for the EU inside and also for those that are outside the EU, because it is determinant to whoever wants to trade with the EU. I'm talking about the broad range of legislation related to food law, or more precisely, using the current definition, healthy food environments, right? What does it mean, healthy food environment, and what has the presidency of Portugal and the Council has done about it? So food environment are the physical, economic, political, and socio-cultural contexts in which people engage with the food system to make decisions about acquiring, preparing, and consuming food. So it's not just about an ingredient, it's not about price, labeling, it's about it all, and many other aspects of the agri-food chain, which is reflected also in legislation. And the European Union, through the Farm to Fork and also the CAP, it's doing many things out of it. There are 7 policy dimensions to take into account for a healthy food environment, which is the food composition, food labeling, food promotion, food provision and supply, food retail, and food prices, food trade and investment as a very last one. So there are seven points. What has the presidency achieved on this matter? Well, it has adopted the EU priorities. Those are 50 priorities adopted by the 27 member states. And it includes actions and initiatives at the EU level, right? There are 2 elements to consider here. First, that in during this year, 20 summit in September, and second, that the German presidency, so the previous presidency, took part of coordination working party of FAO to discuss and prepare council conclusions on that regard, no, as part of the UN decade of action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, right? There are a few key concepts on these conclusions that have been achieved by the Portuguese presidency that I would like to point out. First of all, it's the intention to fix inequality in access to healthy diets, and I think that this is great because it will define the development on the reformulation, the regulation on the formulation and limits to certain nutrients. This is intended due to root causes of food insecurity and malnutrition, right? There is also a whole discussion on actively involving all actors of all stages of the food system. So not only the producers, but also transportation, retailers, consumer, and so on. There's also a huge element of trying to shift the current food system towards a more nature-based solution, no, and ecosystem-based approach. This with the action of soil degradation, environmental certifications and quality schemes, and so on. There are many things of these conclusions that are relevant for the future of the EU agri-food system. And one that we should definitely point out is the responsible and sustainable use of fertilizers. I will not go through all the 50 of them. I just wanted to give a very brief overview, but there is also mentioned the combat of food fraud, the responsible, prudent, and sustainable use of antimicrobials in cattle. All those things are included in the legislative roadmap of the Farm to Fork. Namely, during the first quarters of 2021, the Commission has launched the initiative to improve the corporate governance framework, so the sustainable corporate governance and also the due diligence, which includes requirements for the food industry to integrate sustainability into corporate strategies. Also the development of an EU code and monitoring framework for responsible businesses and marketing conduct in the food supply chain. No? And I want to make a comment on this, right? On the code of conduct for responsible business and marketing practice, right? It is one of the first deliverables of the Farm to Fork strategy, right? It's an integral part of the Commission plan. It was developed in December 2020, so under the German presidency, but it has been delivered now, 1 week ago, 10 days ago. It has intervention of Franz Timmermans, Stella Kyriakides, MEP Herbert Dorfman, and MEP Sarah Weiner, right, as the rapporteur for the Farm to Fork and from the Agriculture Committee and also for the MB Committee, right? The code plays a crucial part in increasing the availability and affordability of healthy and sustainable food options, and that eventually will help to reduce our overall environmental footprint, right? It is a compromise, a voluntary compromise, and this is important to point out. They are designed by 26 food manufacturers, 14 food retailers, and 24 associations, right, which were the first to sign the code. But there are many others that will come along in the coming, I believe, in the coming weeks, right? Perhaps the most fundamental compromise represented by the code, it's the struck between the three pillars of sustainability, right? The environmental, the social, and the economic impact, right? Actually, Pekka Pessonen, right, the president of Copa-Cogeca, has challenged the very concept of sustainability, saying that it is wrong to think that things are either sustainable or not, right? That there are different degrees of sustainability. However, I think that it's very interesting that this combination between the conclusions of the council, which is a commitment for the 27 member states, combined with the EU Code of Conduct, which is a compromise for the private sector, right? What are the things that we could expect shortcomings for the second half of the 2021, right, for the Slovenian presidency? I believe that we will see the launching of interest initiatives included in the Farm to Fork. I already mentioned the initiative to stimulate the reformulation of processed food, including the setting of maximum levels for certain products, and also the setting of nutrient profiles, right, to restrict the promotion of food hiding salt, sugars, or fat. There will be also a proposal for a revision of EU legislation on food contact materials to improve the food safety and ensure citizens' health, and many others that I believe that will be crucial for the productive sector, right? Namely the revision on the implemented regulation for the plant protection product framework, right? And also the directive of sustainable use of pesticides. Definitely, all these expositions that I've done, it's, I would say, the shell of the agri-food supply chain. This is a key core discussion on the pack. And I believe that Duarte Mira can say a lot about it. So I think I will leave it there, Rui, and I will leave the floor to the next speaker for us to be able to maybe to open a debate at the end and reply some questions. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you for a great intervention. I certainly know about your topics, and I would have a couple of follow-up questions maybe later today. Now, we were supposed to welcome Duarte Mira, head of the Brussels office of the Portuguese Farmers Confederation. Duarte is having a bit of a trouble with his internet connection. So we will then proceed with the next speaker. Henrique Bournet is the owner and senior partner at EU Opportunity. Henrique has an MA in political sciences by the Portuguese Catholic University. He was a journalist at Jornal O Independente for 9 years and a political advisor at the European Parliament from 2004 to 2009. In 2009, he founded EU Opportunity. Unfortunately, Henrique could not be with us live today for professional reasons, but he has sent us a message that we will pass on now. Please, Ines, if you could be so kind.
Meaning that we follow issues regarding. Hello, my name is Henrique Bournet. I'm senior partner at Opportunity, and I'm sorry I can't be with you today. And I had to record this message, but there's a good reason for that, and actually has to do with our job and what I had to tell you here. So let me start by introducing you Opportunity. We're a consultancy in European affairs, meaning that we follow issues regarding EU policies and the impact that they have on national policies, on national legislation, but also we also follow the issues regarding to funding. So funds that are either managed centrally in Brussels and can be applied at national level, or the ones that are transferred from Brussels to the member states and then you apply nationally at the member state level. But it's about the policies that I'll start, and it's because of a big policy issue that I cannot be with you today. The European Commission is presenting today its famous Fit for 55. It's the most important proposal that this Commission will present during its mandate. It covers almost everything that has to do with climate and energy, meaning that it covers everything from industry to the automotive sector, from energy producing to energy consumption, from mining to farming, everything, anything you can think of will be affected by this proposal being presented today. And that's why, despite I would like to be with you, I can't join you because we're paying attention to what's being said and the impact that it has on our clients. And that is, in fact, half of the work that we do. Half of our job is to follow EU policies, understand their impact, talk to our clients and explain them the impact, monitor the legislative process, and obviously present their points of view their issues, their concerns, or their support to the different proposals next to the Commission, to the Parliament, to the members of the European Parliament, and also to the member states, to the governments of the member states, in particular to the Portuguese government. On the other hand, and as I said, we also follow the EU funding and it's the opportunities that arise from the EU funding. And as you probably know by now, there are funds that are managed centrally, like Horizon Europe or Connecting Europe Facility, or other like LIFE or Erasmus, for instance, which are projects that are managed and funded centrally in Brussels and are very competitive because you must apply and you apply against competitors from all across Europe. On the other hand, there are funds that are managed nationally. They are managed by the member states using money that was sent from the EU institutions, which was approved when the budget was approved. And that also gives opportunities to companies, particularly because it's planned in the long term. The next one is going to be called into Portugal 2030. It will have lots of opportunities for companies. And that's something we also follow at the national level. To understand that, and then on top of this one, there is the now famous National Recovery and Resilience Plans, which will be funded by the Next Generation EU, this big load of money that the EU decided to have to support the recovery for the member states following this pandemic that we are still going through and which is still having a strong impact at the national economy level. Now, on this one, and much to the disappointment of many companies, I would highlight that the National Recovery and Resilience Plans are not going to be so much an opportunity for companies as they will be for governments. They will be used mostly to fund and finance public policies. Of course, the state is going to buy and will go shopping with that money, but that's not where the business opportunities are. Those are mostly in the forthcoming Portugal 2030, which is still being negotiated. I'd like to be with you here. We have someone in the room watching and ready to take notes of what you would like to ask us, and I will be happy to answer any question you may have. For the time being, what I can tell you is, if you're interested in Portugal, if you want to know what's happening in Portugal and the impact of EU policies, we're very happy to talk to you. And you can also talk with all our colleagues here present today. And if you want to know what's going on in Portugal, the EU policies and funds are paramount to understand that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Enrique Bournet, for having sent this message. I know that you are pretty busy today with your colleagues with the Fit for 55 package. Now, before we ask Eduard, because I think that Eduard is still struggling with his internet connection, but as we know that we have Hugo Marques Souza already online, I will pass the floor, but first I will briefly introduce Hugo. Hugo Marques de Souza is the head of Environment and Circular Economy at Magellan European Affairs Consultancy. That is also a member of our chamber. Hugo has a degree in economy and a master's degree in environment, economy and management by the Faculty of Economics of the University of Porto, and specialized in circular economy at the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto. At Magellan, he has worked as a researcher and consultant from 2014 to 2016, as a consultant from 2018 to 2020, and currently he is the head of environment and circular economy. Hugo, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rui, for this invitation, and also want to congratulate you on this initiative. I think it's very important to reflect upon these times, and this was indeed an intensive semester, while it was a bit different from what maybe we were foreseen when we first thought of this Portuguese presidency. For those of you who do not know Magellan, we are a consultancy with offices and teams both in Portugal and in Brussels, and we mainly work in EU funding and advocacy. Not only we help other entities getting EU funds for their projects and their investments, but we are actually also participating in projects where we are beneficiaries and promoters of several international projects, and we are part of many networks, both at national and international level. I will share a small presentation that we have prepared for today and for the topics that you challenge us to talk about. So in my case, I will focus mainly on what, let's say, it's closer to Magellan and my area. So I will be mainly talking about funding programs and also the green transition. And I also wanted just to give a first disclaimer, because I have taken my COVID vaccine yesterday, so I'm not at my full capacity. If I say something without sense, I already have my excuse for that, but I hope that everything goes well. And I wanted to start talking by giving a quick note about the Trio Presidency, since the programs have a common ground of understanding regarding the priorities, which were agreed upon and launched already in the midst of the first wave of the COVID crisis. In this joint program, there was a big emphasis on the fair and social Europe, on the migration situation, on the European technological and industrial sovereignty, or a debate on the investment on innovative, sustainable, and smart economic transformations. This is, of course, the trio also in charge of the transition between the two multi-annual financial frameworks of the European Union, and Portugal was lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, to be in charge of the first semester of this new plan and new strategy for the next 7 years to come in what regards the European Union. This leads me to the first important event that I wanted to highlight today regarding the launch of the Horizon Europe, the main EU framework program for research and innovation, a very important program not only for the academia and the scientists, but more than ever to the industry and businesses across the EU, since there will be coming a lot of challenges also from legislation, which will entail more and more innovative ideas and tests by the industry to respond and to adapt. Despite the UK leaving the EU, the total budget for the program, well, the previous one was the H2020, was still reinforced and has a total of 95.5 billion euros to be invested during the period of 21 to 27. This was possible because of an effort made still during the German presidency, and also the resilience funds of the Next Generation EU. But it was Portugal that had the possibility of launching the most important funding program of the EU in the beginning of February. And in March, the Council adopted the program. Sorry. This program will be very important for the big challenges ahead of us and in the coming years in areas such as health, culture, security, industry, climate, and the bioeconomy. And I would like to highlight clusters 4, 5, and 6 here in the red square, which are the ones more related, let's say, to the sustainability topics. Still during the Portuguese presidency, already in June, the first work program for 2021 and 2022 was launched. And I just wanted to share some of the topics or the calls which are related to sustainability in these 3 clusters. In cluster 4, digital industry and space, we have the area of production, we have the key strategic value chains, and we have digital and emerging technologies which are needed for the Green Deal priorities. In cluster 5, regarding climate, energy, and mobility, we have the climate sciences, we have cross-sectoral solutions, have energy supply and energy use, and for instance, clean and competitive solutions for all transport modes in the EU. In what regards cluster 6, the support will be given in just some examples in biodiversity, in the food systems that Nicola was talking about, circular economy and the bioeconomy sectors, zero pollution matters, land, ocean, and water for climate action. And these are just some of the examples for, let's say, the priorities for the next 2 years, which will be supported by the Horizon Europe. Another achievement of the presidency that I would like to emphasize was the adoption of the Recovery and Resilience Facility regulation, which only added to, let's say, this unique moment that we are now living and that Enrique was also mentioning before. not only the member states have the multi-annual financial framework to manage, but also this reinforcement to respond to the COVID crisis and to try to work on some of the, let's say, structural changes which are necessary in the EU to make it more sustainable and more resilient. The total amount of the investments will go up to 672.5 billion euros, of which more or less half will take the form of grants and the other half of loans. Of course, some common flagship areas were strongly suggested by the Commission to be included in the national recovery and resilience plans. These included clean technologies, energy efficiency in buildings, broadband services, the digitalization of the public administration, the scale up of the data cloud capacities, and the education and training in digital skills. For the approval of the national plans, at least 37% of the expenditure will have to be channeled for climate investments and reforms and agreed upon, and a minimum of 20% for the digital transition. This also just to give the idea of how it's going to be channeled, also these investments through the recovery and resilience facility implemented in each member state. In the 14th of June, the Council, the urgency of this topic of the resilience facility also helped to achieve in a record time, let's say, the approval of the own resources of the EU. The first to have a common EU bonds issuance. And this was an important output also of the Portuguese presidency that I also wanted to highlight in this presentation. And in June, the Council also adopted the EU's Connecting Europe Facility 2.0, or the new CEF program, let's say, worth 33.71 billion euros, and this will fund the development of high-performing sustainable infrastructure in the fields of transport, digital, and energy. This will be important to complement the investments foreseen in the national recovery and resilience plans in each member state, but now in, let's say, in a more international way. CEF as Horizon Europe is another of the programs which are managed centrally in Brussels. Lastly, I would like also to highlight the EU climate law adoption. The Council and the European Parliament reached a provisional political agreement on the proposal for the EU climate law on the 21st of April. And right at the end of June, both had adopted the EU climate law, which was the first to include, let's say, formally in the EU law, the targets of climate neutrality in 2050 and the reduction of 55% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Here are some of the references. I will share the presentation afterwards, Roy, if you want, and I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Hugo, for a brilliant presentation. Despite the COVID shot, you did a great job. Congratulations. Now, as I was saying, we were expecting Duarte Mira, head of the Brussels office of the Portuguese Farmers Association, to join, or Confederation, not association. But unfortunately, Duarte just texted that he's still unable to connect himself to the internet, which is a bit unfortunate. But that happens, and that's why we need a digital transformation also in Europe, and especially now in the Alentejo region, where Duarte is not very well covered by internet, apparently. So as we slowly reach the presentations, we already received some questions from the audience that I will ask the participants, the speakers, in no particular order. I know that despite Enrique Bornet not being today live with us, there's someone from EU Opportunity that will be able to react to these questions. I would maybe, if you allow me, start by asking myself a question, and that would be addressed to Nicola Del Val. Nicola, your presentation did not, if I remember right, touch upon this issue that has been seen as a shortcoming of the Portuguese presidency, that is the fact that we did not yet reach an agreement at the parliament level to ratify the EU-Mercosur agreement. I don't know if you have any insights about this. What happened? Because this was a priority of the Portuguese government, but it seems like it was impossible to put it through the parliament. And I would like to hear your thoughts on that, please.
Thank you, Rui. I know that you make this question to myself because you know about my Argentinian origins. So it's my pleasure to reply. You mentioned that it's a priority for the Portuguese presidency. I shall challenge you and I tell you that it's been a priority in the last 25 years for all the presidents that have been there. I believe that there are two elements that hampered the ratification for the European Parliament. The first one is the direct confrontation between the Macron government and Bolsonaro, being Brazil the heart and core of the Mercosur. And the second thing is the strong pressure from the European farmers on the consequences that this deal would have for Europe. Me personally, I won't take a position if it would be good or not to ratify this agreement. I believe that the Mercosur project, it's a project built in the reflection of the European project. Actually, at the very beginning has been funded by the European Union in order to develop institutions that unfortunately in Mercosur, the institutions governing Mercosur cannot be compared with one of Europe. I believe that anyhow, for the products that we're importing from Mercosur, the European Union cannot move away towards other origins, namely because it is not, it lacks its protein sovereignty, namely on feed, so cattle feed. And Argentina and Brazil play a huge role on that. As you could see in many communications and initiatives from the parliament also, there is an intention to ease alternatives to soya-based feed products, like for instance, the insect one. I think that there is huge concern on two trendy issues and problems from the European citizens, which is, and one of them properly founded, I would say, which is the deforestation of the Amazonian. We haven't seen from Brazil any intention in order to reverse the situation. Actually, it's getting worse. And this is not me saying it. I believe that if you Google whatever information from the Amazonas, news are not good. And the other thing is the wall and huge and sensitive discussion around pesticides. I understand that from the point of view of consumers and farmers, the concerns are different, but both aims to the same basis, which is if we are not allowed to produce with certain pesticides, why should we import them from outside? No, that on the side of the consumers. On the side of the farmers, it's an unfair competition, right? If we cannot use certain pesticides that in Argentina and Brazil are approved. And how is this possible, right? Because of the import tolerances, and I don't want to get very technical, but the import tolerances are mostly given by the European Commission. Like 97% of the import tolerances for any substance that have been requested in the last 10 years have been approved. So unfortunately, the Mercosur deal, it's again stuck after 25 years. I think that this may be again a mortal deadlock for the Mercosur, because from the European side, we already know the complexity of taking decisions, but you should get to know the one of Mercosur, which even more, because we do not count again on the sophisticated institutions of the European Union. It relies strongly on the executive power, and it changes every 5 years. So this year it happened to be aligned, but if the political landscape of the Mercosur countries change in the coming years, things will get even worse again, and maybe they can drop back once again. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes. So no breakthrough expected for the next presidency, Slovenian presidency for sure.
If you want to make it a bet, I won't. I won't bet. I won't bet for it.
Okay, okay, understand. Thank you for that, Nicola. We now, well, actually, I have also a question for Hugo. Hugo, as you were discussing the Horizon Europe opportunities, as we are the Belgian-Portuguese Chamber of Commerce, we were wondering, from your own experience and from Magellan's experience, have you seen in the past any interesting cooperation projects between Belgian and Portuguese companies? Were there only a few? Do you think that there could be an increased cooperation between Belgian and Portuguese companies, namely taking into account the funds that will be coming their way with the Horizon Europe program?
Yes, thank you. I think it's a very relevant question. Of course, in these types of programs such as the Horizon, where you have the, let's say, the obligation to have an international consortium, it makes total sense to have this strong proximity between entities both on the Portuguese and the Belgian side, and in different sectors. It's something that we have seen in several projects. It's something that we can also think how we can help promote, maybe even within the Chamber of Commerce, because of course the challenges are very common, but the solutions and the ideas come from many different entities, and I think it's a good way of also reaching some proximity between both Belgian and Portuguese entities. And we have seen in the last financial period growing interest of namely on the Portuguese side on these programs, and as I was saying, not only by the academia or thinking that it's a research program or innovation program, but you also have support for scaling up of new businesses. You have, a really concrete materialization of the ideas that you want to propose and taking them also to the market. So it's interesting also for foremost for the business sector.
Thank you. And don't hang up right away because Hugo, I have a follow-up question. Diana is asking, which sector do you believe would benefit the most from the recovery and resilience plans? Because we heard before Enrique saying that hold your horses, companies, this is going to the states, right? To the public sphere, not to the private sphere. But again, I trust that there will be certain private sectors that could benefit more from this plan than maybe other sectors.
Yes, at the end, I'm not sure whether they will be or not, but maybe there will be more opportunities for some of them, of course, namely the ones who are in line with also priorities which come from the EU. Of course, in what regards the public investment, well, this is also a matter of the time period that we have for the implementation and the use of the investment. So there was, I think, this position or this idea that it will be easier to control it if they go through specific public investments. But there are other opportunities which are also coming out. I mean, we just had the green light for the recovery and resilience plan for Portugal. But before that, there were already some calls regarding which are also open to companies, namely in what regards bioeconomy, for instance, and these were directed to specific sectors or value chains. In this case, it was for textile and fashion. It was for the resins, the chemical industry, and for the shoemaking industry, for instance, because there are specific challenges in what regards bioeconomy in these sectors. But now there is also a call open for these agendas for new ideas. Well, they are divided in several sectors, but they are regarding new technology, new green technologies that can be presented, but they are open to, let's say, a contest of ideas. And this was also a way, I believe, that the government found for starting to launch these ideas and these procedures around the recovery and resilience plan even before it was approved. But what is really a bit more complicated, let's say, is how it's going to fund different types of entities, and those who have already seen the publications of these first calls for recovery and resilience plan have seen how, let's say, how complicated it is, and the funding rates are not so big. So I would say that we should focus on, when we look at these opportunities, and maybe for the companies, because usually we'll have less fund, the funding rate will be a little bit smaller, but you should look at it as, well, I really have to do these investments, because otherwise I want to be relevant in the market in a few years. And sometimes some companies say like 50% is not interesting or something like that. But well, if you really have to do that investment, 50% is great. Actually, 20% is great, 30% is great. It's more than none. And if you think that, let's say, your competition is having access to these funds and reaching these funds, well, you may have a problem of, having a competitive disadvantage because you weren't able to look at it. And I think that what we usually say, because we don't promote, let's say, the participation for the project or for the funds only. I mean, it has to make sense what you want to do, and it has to have, a future, what we are presenting. But in this specific time, I would say that every company or every entity should be at least aware of what is out there. And if they want to say no, or it doesn't matter to me, or it's not so interesting for me, let's say they will have knowledge on why they are saying no.
Right.
If you understand me. So I think this is an important aspect of this new.
Absolutely. Thank you. I guess that's where you, Magellan, and also other members of the chamber like EU Opportunity or Trevi are very important in raising awareness, in communicating the opportunities, because without knowing, how can we tell, right? If we are eligible, if it's good or not for the company or for the sector. So I think you're playing a very important role in raising awareness, both in Portugal and across Europe where you're working, and we appreciate that. And Nicola, please jump in anytime if you would like also to give your views on this specific issue of who will benefit the most from the RRP. We also received, meanwhile, other questions, namely from Pierre and from Marcus. They're both asking your views on what you could see as the main achievement of the presidency, if you could pick one, and also the main disappointment or shortcoming of the presidency. Nicola, please.
I would say the main achievement is the big promise of the PAC, right? This informal agreement, definitely, because it's ponderated and it's equilibrated, as we agree with Timmermans. Then the biggest disappointment, really asking that much to presidency. Let's take the case of Mercosur, I would say. Let's take the case of Mercosur. I don't know if my colleague speaker agrees with me.
Thank you, Nicola. Hugo?
Yes, I would say, what disappoints me, and I have started my presentation by talking about what was foreseen, and there were topics such as the migration issues and others that I really don't think there was so much progress, and other topics which are not, let's say, in the program, but of course are, and maybe not so related to businesses, but in what regards, let's say, the European values and how other member states are looking at these topics, and what should be the position, let's say, of the member states regarding the others in those specific areas, in what regards human rights or security issues. I think it was a bit disappointing, and well, the social summit, I don't think it was also what they had foreseen, let's say. But of course, I understand that the pandemic situation, it wasn't really good. I don't think it can be of any good for what we intended to do. Even in the green area, well, there was the EU Green Talks and the high-level conference with Africa, and I didn't think that it was so good as it was foreseen to be, or as it could have been, because of the pandemic situation. I think it was something that it was not so good. And what was good, I think I already highlighted what is, let's say, more relevant for me. Of course, there are other topics which I didn't mention, regarding the COVID passport, for instance, or other topics that I think that it went well during this presidency. Also, in fiscal terms, let's say the first demonstration, let's say, of some of the concerns that we have regarding the fiscal policy and tax transparency across the EU. Of course, I think it was also good to see that in the agenda during this semester.
Thank you for that. Duarte Mira cannot join us, unfortunately. He apologizes for his internet connection issues. He would have shared with us certainly the topics around the common agricultural policy, and we are sorry he cannot make it. As I don't see any more questions coming my way on YouTube or Zoom, I would maybe just like to thank the participants that have been participating through Zoom and YouTube for being here. You now understand that at the Chamber of Commerce, we follow closely all the EU topics that could indeed affect business between Belgium and Portugal. We also, of course, take care of facilitating business across both countries. So please reach out if we can be of assistance. Don't hesitate to contact us. As for our members that have participated today and other members that could not join us today, they are, of course, very capable of assisting you in their respective places and competencies, namely in these very important issues that are EU related. We have the pleasure and the privilege to have as members, namely Atrevia, EU Opportunity and Magellan, that have participated today, but also other members that haven't been here today, but could indeed assist you in dealing with all related issues to the funding or policies or interest representation or lobbying. I'm sure that any of them will be more than happy to help. So if no other questions, and if Nicola and Hugo wouldn't have anything else to add, otherwise maybe I will just ask if Hugo and Nicola, would you like just to say any final remarks or closing remarks?
If you allow me, Hugo, I would
Please.
say that I believe that for everybody that it's inside or outside of Europe, has any connection to Europe, we already understand that European Union has a huge impact in many aspects of our life. And I'm saying this because in my job, I'm repeating this 5 times every day, and I believe Hugo the same. Keep on monitoring what's going on in Brussels. Many changements will come over in a few years. This commission will deliver on the Green Deal, and this will affect all businesses, all people. And for the sake of the democratic process, I believe that everybody should be involved in that. Just that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nicola.
Yes, I totally agree with Nicola, and of course, something that we try to pass on with the ones that we talk. Well, we both bring, let's say, the concerns from Portugal to Brussels, but we also and what is coming in the next years, and it's really something that we usually talk about is about having a passive or more active, proactive position in what regards these affairs, because of course there is a lot of people in Brussels, a lot of interests, a lot of sectors represented, different ideas, different priorities, and it's really important to have let's say, a voice and to first to understand what is going on, and also try to anticipate, because of course sometimes we are only, let's say, when it's already approved and on legislation, it's harder for them to correct or state what you want to state. So I think it's really important to look at this with time, to look at this in a proactive manner, to have a good dialogue with all the institutions, so that let's say we can find a better understanding for all. And thank you very much once again, Rui, for this
thank you, Hugo,
opportunity, and for Nicole also in this participation, and Enrique.
Thank you all. As we say in the lobby world, when there's a discussion, if you're not sitting at the table, that's because you are on the menu. And I'm afraid that we are oftentimes on the menu, Portugal, and we need to be sitting on the table, at the table. And that is why you need to touch base with our partners, our colleagues and friends at Magellan, EU Opportunity, Atrevia. They could help you to sit at the table and avoid being on the menu. So on this note, I would have to thank again all the participants that have watched our event live, both at Zoom and YouTube. I have to thank again all the speakers and for being there and sharing their expertise. At the Chamber of Commerce, we wish you all a very good rest of the day and holidays ahead, if that's the case. And we will certainly be in touch, and please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you. Have a good day.